And I would be in this scenario, Mr. Surya, I would like to ask you how to develop organizations with the future of work mindset, which is more resilient, coping with uncertain times, and more adaptable or able to adapt and thrive, I would say. So,
Thank you, Mr. Sahu. I think it's a great question. When you're talking about how to develop organizations for the future of work, which are resilient, I think one thing that we should understand before talking about it is what's the future of work going to look like? The future of work is going to be very interesting. And then some of it is already here today. It has started happening. So in the future of work, we will see technology playing a dominant role in everything that we do, in what businesses do, what organizations do. We'll see the workplace look very different. We're going to talk about hybrid workplace in the future. A hybrid workplace is a distributed workplace where some people will be working at the workplace, some would be working from their homes, some will be coming to office a few days a week or in a month, and some people will be in different parts of the globe. So, and it's not just going to be a hybrid workplace, it is also going to be a hybrid workforce. We'll see all kinds of people in the workforce composition. We'll see contract employees, we'll see full-time employees, part-time employees, we'll see gig workers, we'll see freelancers, we'll see people working for multiple employers at the same time. The concept of 9 to 6 office has already gone away. I think the pandemic has really expedited that change, and people will be on the go. They will be probably working all the time. They will be working while they're on the go. They could be working from anywhere. And a few other interesting stuff we'll see at the workplace. We'll see coexistence of men and machines at the same workplace. While in the past we saw men and women, today I'm going to see men and women working side by side alongside with machines in the same workflow. So for supervisors, it's going to be a challenge to figure out how to give instruction to men and women and how to give instructions to machines. Machines work 365 days a year, 30 days a month, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Men and women work for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and so on. So how do you really, do the balancing act? I think that's going to be an interesting thing in future. So these are some of the things that we'll start seeing in future. And in future of work, as technology is going to be the dominant player, we will see new technologies. We'll see technologies replacing human beings all the time, or replacing the work that human beings are doing today. So in a scenario like this, organizations, industries will struggle to survive unless they innovate, unless they keep thinking, unless they keep learning all the time. They will find it difficult to survive. So in the midst of change, in a very volatile environment where things are changing all the time, it requires a humongous amount of resilience to stay put and survive. When we think about the pandemic, the biggest challenge organizations have today is how do they bounce back out of this crisis and kind of stay alive, and not just stay alive, but also thrive in the midst of everything that's going on. So I think the biggest ask for organizations would be to find out their purpose. It is a sense of purpose
Absolutely.
that will drive
Right.
the
So
results.
yeah. All right. So you have thrown light on men and machine, on hybrid workplace, various facets of how people will thrive. Now, in the process of adapting to this changed reality, every process, function, and role will be reimagined, fundamentally changing the three critical aspects. What you was just mentioning is one is future of work, second is workforce, and the workspace, where we're talking about hybrid workplace. So, can you
Yeah.
just elaborate further on this? What is your viewpoint on this? All the three aspects, how do they integrate together? I mean, future of work, workforce, and workspace, all the three. Uh, in terms of futuristic, if you look at 5 years from now.
Yeah. So how do the three integrate with each other? I think it's a ever-changing equation. They'll keep changing all the time. And I think what will be interesting to see is while the nature of work is changing, and in some cases we'll see that work itself is disappearing. For example, if I take the example of driving as a piece of work or as a job, tomorrow with driverless cars coming in, driving will disappear. You don't need drivers to drive cars anymore. So work will continue to change, get eliminated, new work will emerge, and work can happen anywhere. It can happen at the workplace, it can happen virtually, it can happen from people's homes, and so on. And the workforce is going to be very dynamic. The workforce will continue to evolve. And I think that's where you mentioned something very important. How is the workforce going to reimagine and rethink? I think that's going to be the real challenge. So every function, every team, every individual will have to reimagine their role. They'll have to reimagine their future. So, for example, as an L&D practitioner, I would urge all L&D practitioners to reimagine their role as performance consultants, as business partners. I would like them to reimagine themselves as members or as entrepreneurs running a startup. While organizations would like to cut down costs, you would really have to look at yourself as a lean, mean fighting machine. How you can contribute value to the organization. How can you really deliver ROI for every program that you run? So we'll have to reimagine our role. For example, during the pandemic, the cloth manufacturing companies, they started manufacturing masks. Automobile companies started manufacturing ventilators. So a lot of reimagination happened. They really re-looked at themselves, they reimagined themselves, and then say, hey, we were known for creating something, but now in a new context, we'll have to really reimagine ourselves.
Absolutely. I mean, and I really appreciate the word you have, the phrase rather you coined, which says lean mean fighting machines. And ROI. I mean, obviously, yes, at this point of time where organizations are cutting costs, one has to be, much more empowered. And a
Yes.
very interesting phrase your point is lean mean fighting machine, and that's what is required. Now, when you're talking about the role of rethinking HR, so what role rethinking HR can play in creating an organization culture that promotes work-life balance, flexibility, opportunity, and growth as the most important factors? I mean, like you also talked about the balancing act. So how can organizational culture of such sort which balances all work life, flexibility, opportunity, and the growth at the same time?
There are a lot of interesting things that are happening today. So I think the concept of work-life balance is becoming slightly outdated, and now we're talking about work-life integration. With most executives working from home today, then their work and life have already been integrated. Now, well, how do you build an inclusive culture? I think that's a great question. I think what will happen in the midst of the change, which is very radical, environment which is volatile and ambiguous, there are some people who will actually be ahead of the curve. They will be thinking far ahead. They will be reimagining. They will be the change makers. They'll move fast. They will be thriving. And there are some who will be surviving. They will adapt to the change quickly. They will follow the leaders. They will, when they see that change is coming, they will start embracing change and so on. They will survive. And there are ones who would find it difficult to change. You know, for example, when the pandemic hit us badly, there were many people who were waiting for pandemic to get over, and then they were saying, "Hey, it's another 2 months, 1 month, 3 months, it'll be all over. We'll be back to the old way of doing things." But the reality is that's not going to happen again. It's a new world that we're talking about, a new norm. So there are some people who will struggle to kind of adapt to the change and then keep pace with the change. But as in organizations, we need everybody, and we need to encourage and promote people who are actually the change makers. Give them space, the opportunity, the challenge, so that they can innovate, rethink, and then take the organization forward and their own career forward. And then we'll have to help the people who are good at adapting to the change, embracing change, and moving forward. We'll also have to support people who are struggling. That's where I think inclusion is very important. We cannot say the change makers will thrive, and who cannot keep pace with change will perish. Then HR, then we don't need HR. HR has to really play that inclusive role. HR will have to support them. People who cannot keep pace with the change will require help. They will require additional reskilling. They will require upskilling. They will require counseling. They will require support. And not just those people. I think within the organization, women who are at their own pace, who have their own work style and preferences, who have their own struggles, trials, and tribulations. HR will really have to make sure that they stand up and they enable people who are thrivers, who are change makers to flourish.
I think we're experiencing some network issues.
Yes. Is there a latency in my voice?
No problem. Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Now it's okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So a very interesting thing we're talking about when we're talking about rethinking the roles. Now, how do organizations rethink their existing processes and hierarchies also? I mean, to allow flexibility and agile working. Now, this word, I know, agility is something which everybody's talking about these days. So, how do you see the agile working and the renewed hierarchies and processes post-pandemic?
I thought this need to be the hierarchies, the processes, the structures, the policies, everything need to be relooked at. I think without getting into the nuts and bolts of the changes, I can talk about the fundamental principles. We have structures, organization structures, processes, policies, which drives ease of working, ease of doing business, empowerment, trust, collaboration, and so on. If processes and policies are too bureaucratic, they're not going to, such organizations will not survive. They will not thrive in this future of work scenario. If you have processes which requires multiple layers of approvals for a small expenditure, then you are not creating an environment of trust and empowerment. There is an organization which allows their employees to fly any class. If they want to fly business class, they can fly. If they want to, they can choose the airlines they want to fly. They have given that kind of autonomy to the people. At the time, hold the people accountable. They say each team, each department is responsible for maintaining that profitability. Will not ask you to explain, why you are spending so much on travel, why are you spending so much on advertisement. But you need to make sure that you meet your revenue goals, profitability goals. So if you empower people, they will do their best. They'll become responsible. People are always responsible. So I think in an environment like this, the fundamental principles of a structure, processes, policies need to be empowerment, trust, convenience, ease of working, ease of doing business, and so on. Structures, processes, policies that hinder all of this will not help organizations. Organizations which have the right structures, hierarchies, principles, policies, practices which support these fundamental principles I talked about will thrive. Each organization can decide how they want to do it.
Thank you for wonderful insights on this. Now, you being a hardcore HR professional and of the national and global presence, what should be the new role of HR? Now, we're talking about what mindset shift does this represent for the future, and how different are these priorities versus today, the priorities which we had in the past. Are you seeing some of them really started to happen? Some possible mind shifts which I would like to focus here, like enabling performance or managing performance. That is one. Second is that the mindset should be job focused or well-being focused. It should be bureaucracy or self-managed teams, which you have said in my previous in a previous discussion. Culture and behavior focused or strategy or goal focused. People focused or technology focused. So I think you have spoken about these. So I just wanted to focus that what mindset shift we are seeing now and we'll see in the future in all these 5 areas.
Yeah, I think there are two parts to that question. I think the first part of the question was what is going to be the role of HR,
Right.
and how is the HR role going to evolve? I think today and tomorrow the role of HR is going to be multifarious, versatile. An HR leader will have to be a technology special. He or she needs to understand technology very well. He or she needs to understand analytics very well and use data and analytics to interpret insights that he's getting and make sense out of it and take decisions basis data and insights. And he or she has to become a good marketing guy so that he can attract talent to the organization, and not just attract but retain them, keep them engaged and motivated and inspired. The HR leader will have to become a finance guy. He has to make sure that he or she does everything, and then also, in a manner where the profitability is not impacted, the revenue is not impacted, and so on. So there are multiple roles the HR person is going to play in future. So I was addressing a group of students in one conversation. One student told me that I chose HR because I did not like marketing. I said, hey, you are in the wrong place. You are a marketing person as an HR leader. So if you chose HR because you did not like marketing, then you are in the wrong place. because in future, an HR guy has to be a marketing guy, a sales guy, technology guy, an analytics guy, a business and finance guy, and so on. So I think we'll play multiple hats. We'll wear multiple hats, and we'll have to switch off one, take off one hat and put on another depending on where we are operating. Now you gave me some scenarios. You talked about whether it is culture or strategy, bureaucracy or empowerment, uh, people focused or business focused, and so on. The reality is both. HR and organizations will have to find the balance. Finding the balance is the key. You cannot be completely tilting towards one side. It's like the pandemic situation, whether you have a lockdown or no lockdown. If there is no lockdown, people are dying. If there is lockdown, people are also dying. They're starving because they're out of jobs, they don't have income. How do you really find that balance? I think the success would lie in finding the balance, the true balance. I think that's important, where you're not completely tilted on one side. As HR, you will have to make sure organization earns its revenues, maintains profitability. At the same time, you'll also have to make sure people are taken care of. People are given the support they need. People who are struggling, people who have health issues, people who have psychological issues, who have nervous breakdown, they need to be taken care of. So you have to take care of people, you have to take care of business. You have to take care of both. I think that's important. In my opinion, it can't be either or.
I think what you say is that it has to be a balance between both the worlds, and I think that is the most challenging part. If you are on one side, maybe on technology or people or bureaucracy or strategy or goal or technology, so it would be easier, I guess, if it is you are on the one side. But balancing with so many evolving things at the same time, I think, is all the more difficult and very, very critical and
Yeah.
very, very difficult, I would say. And I really like the way, I realized actually, when you're talking about the various hats being worn by the HR guy, which is technology, he has to be a technology person, he has to be an analytical person, he has to be a finance guy, he has to be a marketing guy. So I am sure, at this point of time, the HR role is really evolved manifold and multifarious, I would say the role has become.
Absolutely.
Very interesting definition of HR role is we have seen, and that's the benefit of talking to a person who is experienced as far as HR things are concerned. Now we also talked about you talked about people. Now, what is your people strategy? What kind of talent you recruit and how you manage them? Do you see people strategy as a differentiator for companies? Does it make difference? Are there any instances where you have seen differentiated people strategies contributing to impact of company or on the industry as a whole? So what
Yeah,
is
people strategy
yeah,
is absolutely important.
right,
It is a key differentiator. And because today we are living in a knowledge economy where 90% of what we see in organizations is knowledge.
right,
The rest 10% could be buildings, machinery, etc. So it's in a knowledge economy. I think human capital is extremely critical, and the success of organizations depends on the cumulative knowledge of the organization and the organization's ability to unleash that knowledge. So I think there was a McKinsey report recently, a study that was carried out. It says that situations like pandemic or other black swan events put a lot
right,
of pressure on organizations, and there is pressure to innovate. There is pressure on them to automate. There is pressure on them to kind of drive new programs and so on. And in the midst of chaos, organizations really struggle to figure out how to respond to these changes that they see around them. And I think the real success lies in the reaction time. How quickly organizations respond to the changes. So pandemic situation, COVID-19 challenged many paradigms. It challenged many paradigms, but organizations which responded quickly, I think they survived, and many of them thrived. They actually, became more profitable than they used to be before the pandemic situation. So I think what's important for organizations and for individuals to understand is to have a robust talent strategy, which is built around knowledge. And why I talked about change and ability to respond to the change, because it depends on the ability, the collective capability of the organization to respond to the change. So when the external environment is changing, the internal environment also has to change, but that's not enough. The internal environment has to change faster than the external environment if it has to survive and thrive. We talk about the GAFA companies, Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, and so on. They are the organizations which have demonstrated that they can change, they can preempt change, they can see change before it comes, and they take advantage of that, and they become the front runners. So when in the midst of volatility, ambiguity, they thrive because they can see change coming, and they're better prepared to deal with the change, not just to deal with the change, but to sometimes to drive the change themselves. They become change makers. So then what is the crux of that? The crux of that is people, talent. If you don't have the right talent, then you will not be able to respond to the changes. It boils down to capability. So talent strategy is very important. So in today's world, there is a very important thing that we always talk about. There is a talent war, the war for talent. In the midst of the war for talent, organizations need to have a robust talent strategy. Otherwise, they will lose the war for talent. They will lose to their competition. So it's very important that organizations need to have a very robust people strategy and talent strategy at the core. People at the core of everything that an organization does. I think that's important. How do we attract right talent? How do you retain them? How do you develop them? How do you grow them? How do you provide them career opportunities? These need to be fundamentals of any business strategy. People at the core of strategy is absolutely important.
Very true. So you talked about like knowledge economy, and when we are talking about attracting talent, we're talking about retaining talent, and there the role of HR becomes very critical. And one thing which we are being a learning and our development organization, where we are um, uh, working with various organizations as a knowledge partner. And one thing which has come out very strongly is the concept of BAI interviewing skills, which is behavioral event interviewing skills, which is very, very important. And we are working with a couple of organizations regarding this. And it has emerged, and we have experts in who have done research for 10 years or so in this particular technique. And it is very, very strong because unless until you are able to attract the right kind of talent, uh, retaining them, nurturing them becomes much more difficult. And like you had mentioned earlier, and I will talk about it later also, about the role of
And
reskilling
can I
and
just add
skilling.
something which I
Yeah,
missed out?
yeah, please.
I missed out on mentioning that while it is important to have a robust strategy to attract talent and then develop and grow them, etc., what is also important is to create an ecosystem where they can thrive, where they can, we need to create a culture where people are not afraid of making mistakes. They're encouraged to experiment, try out new things. Their growth mindset is encouraged. I think that's very important. There are organizations which spend millions of dollars in getting great talent to the organization, but they don't know how to take care of that, and they fail. Those organizations, the talent who comes in, the people who come in either become unproductive, they get demotivated, and they quit after some time. So I think creating the right ecosystem and culture is also equally important as part of this people strategy.
Very interesting. I mean, what you said is right. I remember, I belong to training fraternity, and when I joined a training organization, so I just asked my interviewer, do you think I can be a trainer? So the answer which was given to me is that you have passed all the tests, all the psychometric assessments, and you have those ingredients. Now it is up to us. How do we groom you to become a trainer? So very, very, very rightly you said that if one is that we need to find the right talent. We have those basic competencies they have, but nurturing them, grooming them, and taking them to the next level is the essence of any organization where you are coming from. And I'm glad that you added this point, because it is something which is very close to us, because we are into training. L&D, we partner organizations, L&D function. So it's very important that once you try to right talent, how do you groom them to take out the best potential? That is very, very critical, very, very important. I
Had some
absolutely agree.
performance
Absolutely
issues.
agree what you rightly said. So my
Can you hear me?
next, yes, sir. You saying something?
Yeah, there was a discussion with Mr. Ratan Tata. They were talking about a manager, and his manager was being reviewed, and then there were some performance issues with that manager. And a senior executive mentioned to Ratan Tata, sir, it is a skill issue. And Mr. Tata replied, is it a skill issue or a grooming issue?
Okay.
The senior executive did not have an answer.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So these are very, very finer subjects, and as I said, very interesting discussion which we are having, because these are something which actually come from experts like you, and coming to that, we basically talking about the people strategy, talking about retaining talent. Now, the other important thing is that how does the organization capture and scale up the productivity that can come with the new ways of working, specifically a new combination of virtual and hybrid model, which you just talked about. How do you accelerate individuals' learning curves so that they can become much more productive? So we're talking about grooming, as you said, you're grooming about conducive environment. So how do we, by improve the learning curve and make them much more productive, particularly in the post-pandemic era? Can you hear me, sir?
In a
I think there's a network issue, and we're not able to hear you, sir. Now we can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. So earlier at the workplace, people were sitting in front of the manager. The manager used to allocate work. So manager had a good idea who is productive, who is efficient, who is producing what he or she is expected to produce. But today managers are really concerned because people are in a distributed environment. So I think productivity has become a matter of concern. But I think the way to address that is going to be giving them the right opportunity and empowering people. If so, managers really need to stop micromanaging. They should stop looking over somebody's shoulders to figure out how much progress he or she has made. Managers will have to really manage by objectives and manage by goals, manage by outcomes. That's the only way to drive productivity. The second thing is, how do you really help people come across the learning curve quickly? People are not in a classroom, not in a production environment where they can be with an SME and they learn. Today, I think there are technologies which have evolved. There are adaptive strategies. When I talk about adaptive learning, which is a new concept which is emerging, adaptive learning adapts to the learning style of the learner. If I'm a quick learner, it adapt to my style. It starts pushing more content to me. It knows that I'm moving faster. If somebody is a slow learner, it gives that learner the space. It gives the learner more time to learn. In a physical classroom environment, that does not happen because every individual gets similar treatment by the instructor or data. Adaptive learning technologies today are actually helping organizations drive, speed to proficiency. Speed to proficiency is a challenge. How can new people become as productive as really?
We are not able to hear you properly. I think some network, this time lag. Yeah.
I switched off my video just in case the network gets
Yeah,
little better
it is better. Yeah,
because
yeah, it's
video
better.
sometimes takes a lot of bandwidth.
Right, right. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I think I pretty much answered my question. But in a nutshell, I wanted to say that adaptive learning strategies today are driving speed to proficiency and productivity.
Okay, okay. So you're talking about adaptive learning strategy, which is a very interesting strategy where it basically depends on the learner's adaptability, or rather learning style of the learner. You also talked
Correct.
about we talked about technology part. So how do organizations leverage artificial intelligence and analytics to infer current skill levels and provide personalized learning experiences for every employee, like fostering a culture of perpetual learning that rewards continual skills growth, career and learning paths? If I have to see from the perspective you're talking about adaptive learning strategies, so how do we use
This is a
AI?
great question.
Yeah, yeah, please.
This is a great question. So how are we using technologies like AI, analytics, etc., to drive personalized learning? I think what I said earlier is linked to
Right.
this particular question that you're asking me. So I talk about something very interesting. I use this metaphor. I say buying your own sandwich. So when we walk into a Subway outlet, um, the guy there would ask you to choose your bread, choose your cheese, choose your sauce. At the end of it, you come back with your own sandwich. Everybody walks into the same outlet, walks away with a different sandwich, highly personalized, customized. Learning in organizations has to become like that. Learners should be able to choose their sandwich. When I say choose their sandwich, I mean they should choose their learning path. Learners should understand what is their career aspirations, what they want to learn. And the learning management system, which is powered by AI and analytics, should enable that. It should push content to me basis my aspirations and interests and styles. Like I go to a Subway and then choose my sandwich and I make my own sandwich, I should be able to create my own learning path using my LMS, which is powered by AI and analytics. I use another example often in conversations like this. Today, when we switch on our smartphone, you keep getting notifications. It says, the moment you switch on, it says 30 WhatsApp messages waiting for you. 20 messages on Facebook Messenger waiting for you. It says, there is a new module, that this is a news item that you may be interested in, and so on. So in the good old days, people used to go and look for content. They were going out to find content. Today, content finds you. Content comes after you. Messages come and tell you, hey, a message is waiting for you. Hey, you may be interested in this. That's how learning has to evolve. Learning has to evolve to that level of personalization. When I switch on, log into my learning management system, it should tell me, Mr. Mohapatra, we think you are interested in this module. This is all that you have been reading all these days. We think you will be interested in reading this blog. We think that you will be interested in this training module. That's how content should find the learner. In the past, learner used to try and find content. It has reversed. I think that's how I see AI and analytics driving personalization of learning.
Very, very true, very true. I think now the network is all right. You can switch on your video and we can see you. I think it's working fine now. All right. Very, very good insights of AI. I mean, we talked about technology. How does it integrate with HR in day-to-day life? This pandemic has also brought tremendous change in human resources planning and the way the operations is, HR is planning in terms of, ensuring employee well-being, performance enablement, and upskilling employees for performing well in these unprecedented times. And at the same time, being future ready. So how is the IT workforce going to change? I mean, it's a question which is very close to us. In fact, that we have seen that at this point of time, it is the performance enablement. People are struggling, they're working in virtual teams, they're working against all odds. So we have designed a very specialized programs, which we call performance enablement solutions, which are bite-sized programs. We run 90-minute workshops, every week, which is very, very popular among the corporates. And these they take care of these things, upskilling, well-being, performance enablement. So how do you see? I mean, how do you use these in reskilling and upskilling and enabling the performance of the employees as an HR person?
Yeah, I think all upskilling, reskilling now needs to be relevant. We should teach people what they exactly need to learn. I don't think we should spend time in teaching people nice to know stuff. That is anyway available on YouTube and Google and all
Right.
that. People can figure out. Our strategy should be very precise. We need a precision strategy where we exactly hit the nail on his head. I think that's very important. So making learning interventions razor sharp and making it very, very relevant to the needs of the job or the new job that the person is going to learn, is going to pick up. Universities, educational institutions have professional courses which run for years together. But people are losing jobs at the workplace. And they're not expected to come into a university or a B school to enroll for a 2-year program and then go back and get a job. They don't have the time, especially people who are suffering from midlife crisis, who are in their 40s, 30, late 30s, early 40s, mid 40s. They can't step out with so many commitments, financial commitments. They can't step out and do a 2-year course. I think our education needs to become more modular. I'm really happy to hear that you have 90-minute workshops. We need modules like this, very focused, razor sharp, very relevant, teaching them practical skills. That is a need of the hour. Organizations need to drive that. Organizations need to engage in such programs, and their curriculums really have to become bite-sized, micro-learning, available on demand, mapped to people and their roles that they're performing today or they're going to perform tomorrow. I think that's important. The other important aspect is outplacement, outskilling. We talked about reskilling, upskilling. We also need to talk about outskilling, where organizations not only should prepare their people for new roles within the organization. There are some people whom they will not find opportunities within the organization because of whatever reasons. They have the responsibility of skilling them, providing them jobs outside. It's not enough to tell them, hey, you worked with us for so many years. Now your skills are not relevant. We tried to find a job for you. We have not found a suitable opportunity. We're giving you a notice period. You find a job. It's not enough. I think organizations have a moral commitment to people who work with them for a longer period. They need to take care of them. They need to provide them the skilling so that they find opportunities outside.
Absolutely. What you're saying makes a lot of sense, and thank you for appreciating the work which we are doing in terms of bite-sized learning, and this has evolved, and as I said, our performance enablement workshops are very, very razor sharp, the word which we used, and they are bite-sized, and that's the reason they are very, very popular. People are liking it and it is so interactive and immersive also, that we make it very lively, interactive, immersive, so that in 1.5 years the person is glued, and he's absolutely immersed in the session. So getting from that gives us a moral booster also, that we are on the right track, and providing these, and we'll invite you of some of the workshops of like these when will happen, as in when. Now it brings us to a very interesting thing what we talked about, outskilling, you said, and also you talked about reskilling, upskilling. Now, what will be the role of outsourcing for HR functions and learning and development? Like as you said, that the capability is not always within the organization. So, I mean, this is something of our interest. How often you think that for L&D functions, outsourcing is there, or it should be done?
Outsourcing will be in the fag end. Organizations will not start with this. Organizations will first figure out what they can eliminate, what they no longer need to do.
Right.
After eliminating, they find they still have to do a few things. The second question they will ask is, can we automate these things? And if they find opportunities to automate those tasks, they will do that. So they will eliminate, then they will automate. Then what cannot be automated will be outsourced, except the core. So outsourcing will be towards the end of the spectrum. It will start with elimination, automation, and outsourcing. Everything that is non-core, in my view, will be either automated or outsourced, both in HR and L&D. And it's not new, it has started happening.
It has been a very interesting journey so far, and we are coming to the close of this session, and I have some time left, which I can take up one question from the audience, and I'll just ask you one question which I've received from the audience. Is the question is, what will be some of the key themes on organization culture that IT sector will need to embrace in the future? Where are we now on these themes?
Key themes of organization culture. I think we have, in the course of the discussion, we have talked about some of this.
Right.
We talked about inclusiveness. We talked about collaboration. We talked about customer centricity. Organizations and individuals will have to demonstrate great amount of ownership, a sense of accountability, respect for each other. These are going to be the hallmarks of the organization culture, and this is extremely important for organizations to focus on them, because all of us know there is a very famous saying, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So if you really don't inculcate the right culture. Culture is a sum total of what you get to see in the organization. The way people talk, the way people engage with each other, the way people interact with the customers, with the suppliers, their behaviors, their demeanor, habits, all this form the culture of an organization. And the challenge with culture is, if your culture is non-responsive, but if a guy who comes from outside, who has great deal of responsiveness and accountability, if he or she gets into the organization and then figures out that people are generally not responsive, even that person will also um, transition to the culture that is prevalent in your organization. So I think bad culture and good culture both are
I think we have lost you.
will have to walk the talk,
Right.
and everybody else will have to consistently demonstrate. The leaders will have to demonstrate, and then if they do that, others will also start demonstrating.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mohapatra, for giving us such a interesting insights and giving, I think, covering the entire umbrella of HR and how does it integrate with organizations and what is the role, how do we rethink, how do we imagine. Before we close, we'll just need to ask you the final three things which you would like to tell the audience as far as the rethinking role of HR is concerned.
If you use the final word for the audience, is that what you said?
Yeah, final words. Yeah, final words.
Okay. So I think what I would like to tell the audience is, today we're living in a world where knowledge is evolving very fast. The knowledge that we acquired in the past in our schools, colleges, universities, we are not using them at the workplace today. The knowledge that we shall need tomorrow does not even exist today. That knowledge has to be invented. It has to evolve. It has to emerge. So all of us need to become lifelong learners. I think that's the message that I would like to leave with you, that invest in yourself, be a lifelong learner. That will take you far in life and in your career. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for a very, very interesting session we had, and we'll definitely, as I would say, dil mange more, and a lot of things to discuss, and we'll invite you some other time on our different show altogether,
Sure.
some panel discussion. Thank you very much for being here and talking to us and sparing your time despite a very busy schedule. Thank you so much, sir.